So welcome and thank you all for joining us today. I'm Catherine Wygant Fawcett, the Executive Director of the Institute for Family-Owned Business, otherwise known as IFOB. We have Brooke Stewart, our Director of Communications, on this with us too. We're so excited to have you here as we kick off our second program in our new online series called Navigating the Remote World. Thank you to Masthead Maine and Bangor Savings Bank for sponsoring this series with us, and the Manufacturers Association of Maine for partnering with us. In a minute, I'll ask Sherry Prey, VP of Bangor Savings Bank, to say a few words. We've muted everyone and turned off your video, or we will, so we can focus on the presentation. We'll be recording this program for later viewing. We'll also share the slides and all kinds of resources afterwards. Dave says he has some fun videos to work, so that'll be coming in the follow-up email. We want to make this as interactive as possible, so please send us your questions in the chat feature. For the IFOB, we promote, support, and champion the success of family-owned businesses, the backbone of our economy. We educate, network, we have education, networking, and other services. So I was just getting a chat. Sorry, I got a little distracted. This year, we're offering over 60 programs, both online, in person, and hybrid. Check out our website, fambusiness.org, for full details. These programs are for all your employees, so please invite them, as well as to join us and anyone else who you think might benefit from them, even if they are not members. We have them open to all. And nominations for the Maine Family Business Awards. Derek is our resident expert here. He has received 3 awards. The first one we ever had. So he's like, you can get different awards in different areas. You can't win them again twice, but he has community service, customer service, and small business, but now you're a large business. So that's cool to have Derek here to give you his advice and information. So if you nominate the family business, they'll recognize that you know their excellence. And save the date for Wednesday, October 12th for our awards gala. The 5th generation retired CEO, Tony Simmons of Tabasco Sauce, is our guest. He hasn't been to Maine. He's coming from Louisiana, and we're going to spice things up. So that'll be fun. And we'll have Amanda Hill, news anchor for News Center Maine, as our host. Check out our website to nominate a family business or register a program, or contact Brooke and I. Today, we're covering a timely topic on cybersecurity, cyber insurance, fraud, and crisis mitigation for your company. Speakers are Dave Hodgkin, Portsmouth Computer Group, Tim Forte, Clark Insurance, and Shelley Prey, Bangor Savings Bank. And our family business speaker that I already introed was Derek Vogt from Vogt Packaging. So he's going to tell us how it's like going to the dentist. We're going to get you through it. It'll be fun. So in the fall, we'll pick this series back up with recruitment and retention in a remote world and a live world. We'll have speakers Tony Alvarez from Viral and Mari O'Neill from Retail Association of Maine. Our family business panelists will be Paige Hartman from Kittery Trading Post and Danielle Hansen, Chief Executive Officer of P&A Bookkeeping and Book Services. Our final in this series is on Tuesday, December 6th, with a look of new ways of marketing your business for 2023. So we're halfway through the year, and we're going to kick it off in December. That will be Jesse Fowler from OSC Web Design and Marie Stewart Harmon of Lisa Marie's Made in Maine. We're also offering a brand new event this year. You all might have remembered Summerfest. We're kind of bringing that idea back. It's going to be a family fun festival on Wednesday, October 17th from 4 to 8 p.m. at Riverwinds Farm in Saco. So we always have all these families and we have kids, and then they can't come to events. So we're going to have a kids event. So we'll have a bounce house, volleyball, giant Jenga, beach balls, cornhole, face painting for when I grow up and what I want to be. We'll have a magic mirror booth, musical entertainment, food, beverages, and more. It'll be something for all ages, so the teenagers down to the little ones. So bring your kids, spouses, and have fun. And you can check out our website for that to sign up. Towards the end of the program, we'll ask you to please fill out a quick survey, which we'll put into the chat. Your feedback is so important to help us on how we develop this program today. And I'll now toss it to Shelley to kick us off.
Thank you, Catherine. Bangor Savings is proud to sponsor this event today. This is a very important topic from all aspects. We're really seeing a high influx of bank fraud, which also trickles over to the other two folks that are presenting today, and then the impact of our small business or large business in Bulk's case. So this morning or this afternoon, we'll kind of hit all the high levels, and you'll see how it will all be strung together between all impacts from technology to bank to insurance, and then from the client's perspective. So I will turn it over to Dave Hodgson, who is CEO of Portsmouth Computer Group. Dave?
You. Well, good morning or afternoon, everyone. Glad to have you attend the session right here. This is something that's near and dear to my heart here at PCG. We've been in business since '96, and we weren't talking cybersecurity or compliance or insurance at all 15, 20 years ago. But similar to what I tell my clients, living near the water, you didn't have to deal with flood insurance. So it's kind of something that we have to embrace. When I ask Derek some questions, we'll realize it's painful. But my goal today is kind of speak to you in English, give you some things to, I'm a constant believer in educating and giving some information that we can relate to. And I'm always available to anyone to answer more questions. So thank you very much for coming. And we just got some slides to get going here. So we'll start off with the poll. Has your business done a complete security risk assessment? I'd like to get a good idea who in the room here has done a complete security risk assessment. I know people answer that. A lot of people think they do it once, but as we get through this, you're going to realize this is something as you review your business plan, you review your banking, you review your insurance. This is something that you should be doing yearly and continually look to improve to protect my business. I think we're ready for the next slide. I haven't seen the answers yet on that, Brooke. Oh, there they are. All right, so it looks like we have about 1/3 of the group has done a full security risk assessment. So I'm glad that you did that. I know it's a good time to kind of ask a question out, Derek, who's just gone through that. Derek, did you feel running that exercise helped you in your business kind of have some awareness of where you stood from a company and your employees?
Yeah, definitely. It was like you said, it was and we're still in the process of it, a bit of a painful exercise, but it really opened up our eyes as to where the gaps were. And it's just a necessary evil in this day that you have to protect yourself against cyber attacks.
Were you also concerned about your remote workforce? In today's world, so many people are working not only at the business that they've picked up and they're kind of working from home. I know we kind of spoke of that in the past. Do you feel you're concerned about people working remotely, not under the Volk umbrella of security?
Yeah, and we just actually, since you and I talked earlier today, that was one of the things that we talked about, is getting the MFA, the extra protection on everybody's computer, and even the people that are working remotely, and not giving it as an option. It's like paying your taxes. It's just something you have to do. Or going to the dentist.
Did you feel that the exercise was beneficial to risk? And do you feel like you know, a big part of me is it's the person's brand awareness of your name, your businesses. If something were to happen, that's the hard part, that people, if their business were to be hit, and how they act to it. And I think you do so much for your business and the community. I mean, your brand, you wouldn't like your name being in the news. Is that a big part of that for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And just knowing that you're protected against some kind of cyber attack. One of our competitors actually had a cyber attack happen to them earlier this year, and they literally couldn't even print a Word document. Their whole system was completely shut down. And, that's just, that would be devastating if something like that happened. Our customers need our boxes, and they need them when they need them, or else they can't ship their product. So if we were to be down for multiple days without being able to even you couldn't even send an email to people, it would be devastating.
Right. And part of that, Derek, is not only if you're affected with your brand, if you've been hijacked, potentially your customers could be part of that too. If it's come to you, it could easily go to them too. So we're talking about, but thanks for the input. I'll have a few more questions for you as we get going.
All right,
So
sounds good.
Again, our topics from a high level is just some current headline news. I'm assuming I think it's just that we see things that are happening to us locally. We'll go over a couple of cybersecurity threats. I'm going to briefly go over NIST. I think that's a key component for many businesses to understand what that is and kind of set up the protocol, and you'll see some good diagrams for that. We'll briefly talk about why it comes back to a risk assessment. And depending on the industry, and there's probably many of you that need to meet various compliancy regulation. You could be dealing with the government, you could be dealing with the military. So depending credit card, banking, there's a certain kind of compliance that you need to check off that box, not only for to be insured, but in order to do business. Tim will be talking about the cyber insurance. And of course, Shelley would be going over the banking guidelines. And then what your business can start thinking about to mitigate risk. Unfortunately, none of us were really thinking of putting security as a budget item, but we've seen over the last 6 years that your IT budget was about 80% of your bill, and security was down here. It is really trending that security is becoming a major component of your budget, and you need to be thinking about how to minimize that risk, because ultimately you don't want your data locked. You don't want to affect your employees or your clients. So again, just from a high level, the COVID created a second boom. I kind of asked Derek the question earlier. They found a way that many businesses weren't protected at their homes. So they just had their way with people working from the home. Malicious emails were up 600%. There's been 175% increase in attacks over the last few years. A lot of people see in the news the big guys being hit. They're really going after the SMBs because we're a little more vulnerable. We don't have as many checks and balances in place. So we've seen a huge uptick in the SMB business, and that's who they're going after. They're not targeting, Derek, they're not targeting a particular business. They're just out there fishing. So, I mean, it can happen as when Shelley talks about it, it's just through an email. They're really not targeting anyone. They're just looking for anyone. I call it like fishing. I'm going to throw the hook out there. If I get a fish, I get a fish. So it is, and that's one thing most owners say, it'll never happen to me. I have a hard time believing that anymore. It can happen to anybody. So again, a ransom attack is a hack pinning approximately every 11 seconds. 80% of these payers were attacked again. So that's kind of when Tim talks about insurance is don't let it happen, because you don't want to have to make that decision. Am I going to pay the guy or not? Because if I pay him, he still has my stuff. He's going to lock me down again. The average downtime is 10 hours. So Derek, if your business was down for a full day, what impact is that going to have?
Well, it's not just a day, because we now lost that day, which
Yep.
means that everybody the next day, it's like when planes get canceled, and all of a sudden all these passengers have to go on planes later that day. Well, there's no planes later that day because those planes were all full.
Right.
And so being down for one day has a ripple effect for, it could take weeks to catch up.
And just because you're down doesn't mean you have your data. So you're down. Now you might have to recover 2-3 weeks ago. So accounting and sales is looking for data before. So you might be down, but you might not have access to that data. 42% said cyber insurance only paid a small part of those damage. So Tim will be talking about that. I find that most people I speak to think they have insurance, but it's really just an umbrella or a small part. It's not a true cyber insurance. Tim will go over that. And it's important that you understand when you do the risk assessment, you'll be able to check out those boxes, because you do want cyber insurance. It is your friend to protect you. You have insurance on your house. You have insurance on your business. You have insurance on your car. You have to have insurance on your data. If your data is locked, your business is screwed. The average time to start encrypting is about 3 seconds. So you can hit the next slide. Thank you. So recent headlines: Maine Health, Hannaford, two of Maine's largest employees have been affected by the Chronos, the time clock. Rockport of Maine, a hacker locked down the town officials. York Animal Hospital, ransomware demands on Bitcoins. North American organizations have been hit with approximately 500 cyber attacks per week. Ransomware is wreaking US cities. We're seeing a lot of towns and municipalities hit. Because the bad guy is not working during the day. You know, I think a lot of government, municipalities, and banking, they're working during the day, so they're really working after hours. 75,000 email inbox has been hit with credential phishing campaigns. You know, these numbers are just staggering. You know, updating. You know, Forbes is saying update your risk management, prioritize your cybersecurity. It's something your organization should always be thinking about. There was a big attack here in New Hampshire last summer. I'm not, you know, I'm on the other side of the border right here, but that's a big hit right there. 2.3 million. And it was could not believe they paid it. Okay, so these are things you need to be thinking about, and it's in the news. I'm sure many of you have been hearing. I think when the news hits close to home, or Derek mentioned earlier, someone else in this industry got hit, it kind of makes you realize, oh, that could happen to me. So depending on your industry, keep an eye on what's going on, what your industry is doing to prevent that. So NIST stands for the National Institute of Standards and Technology. It's broken into 5 buckets. I'll try to keep it very simple, but it's pretty straightforward. The first one's identifying. Similar to us in business, we want to identify the problem. What do we have? What are we trying to protect? What are we doing for our business? Is there any compliance that I have to do my work? What insurance do I need? What are my current assets in place that I have or don't have? Is my firewall up to date? Do I all have Windows 10 machines? You know, now I have people working from home. Have I really identified everything in my work environment? So it's very important to take that full asset management of what you have. Think about your line of business applications, all your other vendors you deal with. You got to kind of put them all together. Now let's start thinking about where the potential risks are, and you just start talking, where are my gaps? So that's the first important part, is identify. The second part is protecting. You know, what can I put in place to currently protect what I have? You know, common things is passwords. It's amazing to me that many businesses still don't have a password management system or force employees to change their passwords. You're kind of opening the door. You're giving your key to get into the house. Security awareness and training is, I always explain it to, you can't tell your kids to clean up the room once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. You have to consistently embrace and let your employees know. Derek has to embrace it from the top down, and then it's our job to consistently make the staff know, because if one person on the bus is not paying attention, that's the weak door. You got to talk about how you're going to protect things, what maintenance and updates, and how you can be proactive to potentially protect those things. The next big bucket is detection. Detect what is weird, what is unusual potentially going on there. Is there, something I have to monitor at night? And these buzzwords might not mean something to you, but I'll do the first one. It's pretty straightforward. And EDR stands for endpoint detection and response. Think of it as an antivirus on steroids. It's actually watching your machine. You'll hear the other term down below called a SOC, a Security Operations Center. So it's being monitored 24/7, looking for something unusual. So if Derek's remoting in from his home, he's in X town, but all of a sudden someone's trying to remote in using his credentials from an address that doesn't recognize, that's an anomaly. I mean, it's something that's not normal. And it's our job. Wait a minute, Derek, are you not at the normal place? This is you. So you want to look for things, because the bad guys are coming for typical addresses outside the state. So if something doesn't look right, it's going to shut it down. Is someone trying to change the admin password? Is someone trying to move files that shouldn't be moving? So this EDR, I'll talk about a little later, is one a key component you can get. The next thing is respond. From that standpoint, does your business have a plan? I'd say 90% of businesses do not have a plan. If event were to happen, are they ready with the FBI, the police, their insurance, their accountant? They have a response plan where they're going to be. they typically don't. And I can't emphasize that the red and the green are the most two important. You got to get through the earlier ones once you embrace this. But if you have a plan, the stress level goes down. We know what we're going to do. You know, Derek, if he gets hit by ransom, he's going to say, screw them. I'm not going to pay you. I have a plan. Or he's going to pay. So he has to have a plan. He has to protect his brand because you know the news press is coming. So if he has a plan, it's going to help. You got to kind of test the plan out and you review it. And, you know, how are you going to communicate it? And in the recovery, that's probably the most important. If it does happen, can I recover? And there's two big buzzwords I want you to remember. It's called RTO, recovery time objective, and RPO, recovery point objective. At what point of time do I need to go back to recover? If you're talking to people in accounting, they don't want to lose a day. At what point do I need to just think about that? So if Derek's business were to be hit and he had to go back 30 days, lose all of his data, painful. So he's got to come up with that point. I can accept 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. So that kind of helps your plan on what you're going to back up, how you're going to recover, how you're going to test. Because if you don't test it and you get hit by ransom, you don't know if it's going to work. So it's very important to really think about the respond and recover. I have 2 slides here. I just love sharing with people to educate them. I think most people get securing your home. You know, you're going to prevent things from happening, how you're detecting, and how you're responding. You know, people could have a dog, a weapon, a bat. You got motion detectors. You know, with the new Spectrum or Comcast, you have various ways you see the nesting, who's coming in. You know, if the bad guy wants in, he's going to get in. So you can start preventing. You can start detecting, but if something happens, what are you going to do? You know, the neighborhood watch, you're going to call the police. You just don't want to leave your door open and make it easily accessible. So again, think about how you're securing your home. Now we're going to go to the next slide and how you're going to protect your business. Same thought process, but just a little bit things differently that, you know, when you open the door to your house, you're using your key. Well, think of that as my password. So I want to have good passwords to get in. Derek brought up a point earlier about multi-factor authentication. I assume most on here have done that. And Shelley would talk from a banking. When I do anything with my banking, it's confirming I'm the guy with the phone. It's doubtful. They have your password and your multi-factor authentication code to get in. So kind of think of it as my regular key, but I get a deadbolt or a code to get into it. You're going to have, you're doing your cyber, you're preventing, you're doing training to your staff to help prevent them to let that bad actor in. When you start detecting, you'll start seeing there's stuff you can do to minimize that threat. And then the response is on the right side that you have someone monitoring it. You have someone that's going to act and have a plan. So start thinking about the way you secure your home, which is pretty straightforward. We're going to take that same concept and secure your business. So I just love this slide to just make you visually what you need to do. Unfortunately, Derek, is if you go back to the previous slide, security is painful. It sucks, but we have to talk in the reality. It's here. And Derek, when you told me the story last week, can you give me a little story about how much you love security?
Yeah. I was saying that it's like going to the dentist. You know you have to do it, but you never want to, and you don't enjoy it, but you don't really have a choice.
Yeah, but what was the big thing you said after it that I think hit home with me?
I don't remember. What was that?
If you don't deal with it, the pain could be worse later.
Oh yeah, exactly. Much worse.
I mean, so much worse. So, you know, you got to think about protecting your data. You need to have a plan. So just like if you ignore your dentist, it can be worse. And, you know, you don't want security to be, it's painful. Unfortunately, it's a part of business. You know, the internet is a way we do business. So it's something you need to be thinking about. So the whole purpose of, you know, kind of where we're trying to go at is, you know, why you need to do a risk assessment. Your goal, and I like using the analogy, and I'm a huge Patriots fan, is like Bill Belichick. I don't mind giving up a field goal, but I don't want to let that guy get the touchdown. You know, you can't stop everything, but how can we reduce that risk? What things can we put in place to minimize risk? A lot of this has money to it. So usually when you do a risk assessment, there's probably 20 or 30 things you can do there's 3 or 4 big ones. Some are free, some have a cost. So I always say chip away at it. It's security is expensive. If you're in banking, if you're in medical, the expense is even more because you have to protect those assets. So again, the goal is to minimize those threats. Funds transfer, Shelley, you can't let that money out the door. You got to watch that stuff. I couldn't believe one of my clients is in a town. They use their Gmail account. And they have to approve through the board of how they're spending money. So they're sending to all these emails to approve stuff, and the hacker happened to be on the other end of the Gmail account, saw what was going on and started making check numbers, and they've got another couple $100,000 out of it. So you just have to be, someone last week, but my accounting person came to me, says, did you approve OG to change his funds to a different bank? I'm going, these are things, if you're training, you're helping your employees there. So information leaks can happen everywhere. Become insurable. Tim will talk on that. If you do the checklist and you're showing them that I'm making progress, I'm trying to get there to the finish line, they are going to help you get the insurance you need to protect those assets. The business value is all over the board, depending on what you're going to pay for insurance. My fees have quadrupled in the last 3 years because of the industry I'm in. So depending on your industry, you're probably a higher risk factor. You need to make sure you're staying on par to minimize those risks. But ultimately, what you want to make sure when Tim speaks about, make sure you're going to get paid if you get attacked. So if you've done your due diligence, you follow all the protocol, you get attacked, that now the insurance company, well, you didn't do X, I didn't mean that. So we want to make sure you get paid. Our goal is to knowing and that with confidence, whatever security investments you make, you kind of know that I'm minimizing my risk and I'm trying to optimize my IT investment. So with the risk and cyber insurance assessment, we run a pretty detailed, it's an exercise that we run, probably encompasses about 3 to 4 hours of a business time. You're going to go through your current practices. We'll run external and internal vulnerability scans. We interview the leadership team because a lot of it is just business questions. Do you do background checks? Do you have motion detectors in place? Do you have a cardless system? Our goal then is to deliver a report to you to kind of show you the gaps and then kind of show you a plan and a cost to get there. And you kind of want to coincide that with what the cyber is looking for, because a lot of the insurances are looking for X. And you'll see them right now. I'm sure many of you are seeing them right now. They're going to send you this list. Are you doing X, X, and X? I'm pretty sure Tim will hit on that. Again, our job is to give you an executive summary, prioritize that, and give you analysis. It's pretty straightforward to read. Derek, did you read that report?
Yep, bits and pieces of it.
Okay.
Yeah, we went over it. I got the highlights.
Was there anything on there that stuck out to you?
No, we still have a lot of work to do. As much as we've done to try to prepare, there's still holes that your team and my team are filling. And as you said earlier, it's not something you just do and put away. It's something you just got constant, because the bad guys they're not just sitting back and saying, well, we've done everything we can do. They're coming up with new ways constantly to go after you.
Yeah, so from Derek's standpoint, it has to come from the top. You have to embrace it. And even today we asked the question, he got it. It has to happen. It has to be embraced. I can't say that enough right there. And you get another big point, Derek says you have to review it because things are always changing. So pretty straightforward. You run vulnerability scans. We use a third-party service called KnowBe4. You got to use, we're an IT business. We're not a security expert from all this exterior. You've got to use some of this is what they do. So we run scans against your systems for vulnerability inside and out. And you're just trying to see, is there something showing up that shouldn't be there? And you're checking stuff on the internet, your IPs. You're just trying to see, is there something going on? If you're doing credit cards, PCI, you just kind of want to follow what's happening on the very scan. So depending on your industry and compliance, there's certain scans you'll need to do. And then the goal is to give you a report on that. So based upon the compliance, there's the NIST, which most businesses follow, is what the risk assessment is followed on. It's a series of about 120 questions, and you follow through is going to kind of give you a grade. If you're in manufacturing, you might have to do CMMC, which stands for the Cybersecurity Maturity Model. If you're in medical, you might have to do HIPAA. So depending on the industry that you're in, there's a compliance checklist of additional questions that we have the ability to take those questions to the next level and answer those to help meet your guidelines. And a lot of this is just to do business. You know, if you want to grow your business, if you want to potentially bid for something, having these checklists or part of your marketing efforts is going to help you win more business. So it's very important, depending on your industry, always check if there's certain things compliance. Now, Derek is not necessarily selling to the government or the military, but if he has options to go that way and want to sell boxes to either or, he would just have to check off the next series of questions, and then he'd be able to do that. Is that intentions? Are you doing it at all right now, Derek?
We're not, but we are getting more and more customers that aren't military or government asking us what our cyber protection security is.
Right.
And it's becoming part of their vendor qualification surveys that we get on a pretty regular basis.
Right. And I would say that it's important to what Derek just said, that as your clients are kind of, because you potentially, if you get hit, they could get hit. So that's why they're asking that question. All right. So I know my time's running, so I'll keep picking up the pace right here. Next slide. So these are the big four. Password management. Embrace it. Doesn't cost you anything. I'm going to change my passwords every 30, 60, 90 days. People hate changing their passwords. I hate when they say, I keep my password on the bottom of the keyboard. We see them taped everywhere where passwords are. So it's very important to have a password management. So, and as well as something that I have, I think the average person uses 4 passwords for 50 sites. Get a password management system that allows you to do that. We use Keeper. MFA, I think most on this group know what that is. 2-3 years ago, they didn't, but you know, multi-factor authentication. It could be your email, it's going to your banking. As Derek just said, when they log into the network now, they're confirming it's them. That is a huge step to get the bad guy out of there. So password manager, MFA, training. At least do it in person once a year, and then do it with automatic campaigns. I did speak briefly on the endpoint detection. Most people put that on their servers, but the weak point is the user, is the desktop. So I always recommend leadership, accounting, because they're going after the people with the money. They're going after the golden nugget. So put that EDR detection and response on the desktop. You know, the average cost is about $5 a month. That's $60 a year. That's not too much to protect that. Next slide. So does every employee have a strong password? Make it happen. More than 6 characters. It's pretty straightforward. Almost 24% of breaches, poor password management. If you have a good password management, you just improved your game by 25%. Don't use your sister, your dog's name. Be creative. Maybe your favorite song. Do something that you can remember. The next slide. And make them change regularly.
Dave, are you saying I should change my password not to password 1?
Or test 1, 2, 3? Correct. Yes. But employees are to change their passwords regularly. I think 90 is companies can bite into that one. You know, if you're more regulatory, you should be every 30, 60 days, and don't reuse the last 5 passwords. So again, because these guys, they're banking your passwords. These computers in the back end are going through millions of passwords. If they think they're close, trust me, they're going to figure that thing out in no time. All right, next slide. So when possible, we talked about it, use two-factor authentication. It's a must. I don't care whether it's a work phone or a personal phone, you as the business owner, it's your data you're protecting. Your employees have to, what's my personal phone? I'm not going to do that. I don't care. You've got to use this. If you're accessing my system, you're working from home, you have to follow this. I'm not doing to penalize you. It's just a process. It's a way of doing business. So you have to have two-factor authentication. So training, we talked about that. do regular computer training. I've talked about the kids. You don't get it once or twice. I recommend doing at least a couple times years ago. Do the fake phishing campaigns. Nothing happens. The people that get hit, you get the report. And if someone's not hitting the thing 2-3 times, you gotta have a talk with that person. They're the person that could let you, hey, you got to start paying attention here. And it's your job for HR to promote that. If it gets embraced internally, HR is promoting it. It's just something it's part of everyday business right now. We talked about the EDR before, so there's not much. I know we hit on that earlier, Brooke. So EDR, embrace it. Those are the big four to me. I think those were my slides. I think it's time for me to pass over to Shelley, I think.
All right, thank you, Dave. I feel like listening to your presentation is the same conversations I'm having with my clients from a banking side. So like you, 5 years ago, we were talking about fraud, but since COVID hit, it's 2/3 of my job now, really helping be proactive and trying to get out and see clients and talking about it, or for those in a reactive mode. So next slide, we just have today's agenda. What is fraud? I'll identify a handful of ones that we see here typically on a daily basis. How to protect your business, tools and resources, and security tips. And then today's poll question, how many businesses on this call today have experienced bank fraud against their depository accounts? Let's see. And regardless of the answer, if you haven't yet, you will. So that's really, I think Dave and Tim can appreciate that. And I know Derek.
So I answered no, Shelley. I should just answered yes because
just say yes. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Because we all do it, and personally too, right? We all have had something happen as well. Let's give it another minute. All right. All right, Brooke, we'll move to the next slide just as we're watching that come in. Okay, I have. So, all right. So we're about 50-50, a little more, but all right. Thank you for that.
Does that number surprise you, Shelley?
I thought it would be a little higher in the I have,
Okay.
just because, but I was more worried that the I have not was going to be higher. And that's just because a lot of our client base, and it's not just Bangor Savings clients, it's any financial institution, and others in my peer group at other banks have all indicated that they've seen an increase. So it's all over the board. So here I've identified some examples of bank fraud. So the old standard true is check fraud, either the altered payee name, check number, and or dollar amount, or all of the above, with just the account number being the same. We have automated clearinghouse, which is ACH fraud as well. Wire fraud. This is a big one for many factors. And this is what I've seen personally impacted a lot with our title companies and law firms, just because of the nature of their business. Unfortunately, during COVID, one of our law firms, one person was working remote while the attorney was in preparing for a closing. What they didn't realize was the perpetrator had gotten into their Microsoft Outlook, because they did not have multi-factor authentication on that. And they sat and watched activity for 6 or 8 weeks, waited for a large closing. And when that all happened, everything looked the same. They followed all their procedures. However, the beneficiary information on one of the larger wires, a 7-figure wire, was changed. In that case, it was at about the time that the law firm figured out that it went to the wrong place. The beneficiary bank actually flagged it because it was out of character for that particular account. So very, very lucky they were able to get that money back, but it really opened up their eyes to hiring somebody like a Dave and his company to come in and look at where the access points are for these folks to get in. Title companies, same thing. A lot of times they're going back and forth with different closings. So they get in, they watch, they monitor. I had another recent event that happened where a person was purchasing a rental home and thought she received the email from her attorney saying that, okay, send the deposit. So you
Is that everybody or just Shelley?
I'm still on my
Shelley?
call.
folks,
Okay.
all
I'm
of that.
good.
Okay, Shelley, you just blanked out a little bit.
I did. All right.
Come back.
All
Sorry.
right. Am I back?
Yeah, you just
Yes.
got hacked, but you're back.
Okay, great. So I know Derek on a number of occasions because we work together and your folks have indicated when I'm out visiting that the email phishing is always out there. So it's really paying attention, hovering over, making sure, you know, I tend to email Derek's finance folks. So if he were to receive an email from me or I were to receive an email from him, somewhat out of character, I would not be surprised to hear from Derek, but if it's something accounting related, that wouldn't be the norm. So really hovering over that and making sure that that's legit. Perpetrators have gained access to online banking platform. We've had that happen where someone's gone in because someone didn't change their password. They didn't have the MFA in place and tried to change their administrator rights. And we were able to catch that. One time we did not, but then we were able to catch it under the next level of security that we have in place at the bank to cover that. Stolen vendor mail. This has happened on more than one occasion. You know, you're paying vendors by check, paying your suppliers. You know, if there's a mailbox out at an industrial park with no lock on it, someone's going to come through at night and steal that mail. That's all checks that are sitting in there. They recreate them. So that's out of your control, but that's something that can happen to the vendors on the other side. And then there's internal business fraud, where you have somebody internally at the company that has decided to either try to make transfers, take money from the business owner. Really important to have dual control and monitoring. And I'll go over in a minute some steps to help improve that. And then I think the other piece is a lot of times businesses, you know, they want to do business with a new company. That company wants a credit reference. You list your bank, you list your, you know, one of your other vendors. And on that credit reference, it says, give me your account number. Please don't put your account number. Only add the last 4 digits. The bank knows your account information. The less time you can put your account number out there, the better. As soon as you mail a check, you're advertising your account information. So just kind of things to think about there. Next slide. All right. Questions to consider. And again, this is for a lot of the accounting folks, but then how this impacts the owners of the company like Derek. Do you allow other businesses to pull money from your business accounts? A lot of companies do. It's easy to go to the CMP website or the cable or credit card company and make a payment, and then that money pulls out. If you don't have protections in place, which we'll talk about, anybody can do that. If you have those protections that are not in place, anyone can create an ACH transaction. Do you issue checks, ACH, or wire transfers to pay vendors? You're likely paying a vendor in one of those manners. And there's ways to help protect that. Do you log into your bank portal on a regular basis to review the account activity? Generally, this is your accounting team is doing this for you, but as a business owner, maybe Derek wouldn't log in every day. He's getting a high level review of what's going on, but it's making sure that someone's looking at that account balance and that activity and knows the activity and its normal practice to identify anything that might be out of the ordinary. Big thing is reconciling all business accounts in a timely manner. believe it or not, there are still some customers that are not balancing and reconciling their accounts, at least minimum monthly. Some of the other higher volume accounts should be more regular, but those are where you can identify risks and potential items that might be fraudulent. Has your bank representative discussed their fraud solution offerings? So I know one of my best practices and one of the things that I'm tasked with is visiting our clients and talking with them on an annual basis to make sure how are things going, not just about the services that we've implemented, but how are they doing? Me advising what's going on. Do you have fraud solutions in place? Why aren't you? Is it because of the cost? Does it make sense? And really just helping them and advising and to make sure they're aware of what's happening in the market, making sure that they're in a place of being proactive rather than reactive. And then the last one is your bank information under dual control with your company? What that really means is it's somewhat like an MFA. You've got that second layer. If you have two administrators that are managing your online portal, only one can do one piece while the other has to sign off. Or if your company's small, which there is a lot of small Maine businesses, making sure that not all the control is with the bookkeeper, making sure as an owner that you're going in and looking at things and making sure your business. If your business is HVAC, HVAC, your client base. Be sure that someone else besides that day-to-day person is looking at that information as well. Derek, I know that for Volk, we had implemented positive pay and ACH blocks and filters about 5 years ago. And that was very proactive. I think at the time, I tried to look back through my notes. I think you had checked fraud, and that's what prompted all that, but well ahead of the curve. Is there anything from your perspective on the banking side? I know I work with Lori quite a bit that you'd want to share about this.
No, Bangor Savings has been terrific on that front. Very helpful, helping us get things locked up on our whole accounting side,
Mhm.
payments, receivables. It's all opportunity for somebody with nefarious intent to come in and access,
Yes.
because you never know where they're going to access. I read an article recently about the big Target. I remember a couple of years ago when Target was hacked, and they came in through the air conditioning system.
Mhm.
So the air conditioning system was connected to their entire network, and they couldn't get in through the regular network, so they came in through the HVAC, and then came down, and all of a sudden they had everybody's credit card numbers. So
Right.
you just never know how they're going to find their way in.
Right. And a lot of times, as I think Dave might have mentioned earlier, they're sitting out behind the scenes watching your activity, seeing who's emailing to who's doing what, figuring out who has controls, and just waiting to pounce, really, to make a change or to help hack or do ransomware. We've had plenty of clients, unfortunately, that had ransomware, which has shut down their systems for weeks. Derek, you were mentioning it would be awful for one day. Can you imagine what it would be like for weeks to have these shut down on all aspects of your business? And you're really in manual mode, and it really is testing your disaster recovery plan or business continuity plan, which Dave talks about in preparing for and testing that.
Yeah, and we also have a very extensive business continuity plan in the event that there is some kind of, whether it's a cyber attack or a hack or a pandemic. You have to be prepared for that, and they do watch you. We had a situation a couple of years ago where my CFO had just left for vacation the day before,
Mhm.
and they emailed Lori and asked her to do a wire transfer for, I think it was like $19,000. And she came in and asked me about it, and I looked at it and I thought, well, that's weird that he would have done this on his first day of vacation, because he was on vacation, but it was from Douglas Hellstrom. And then I looked at it and I said, well, let me ask you a question. When was the last time he signed an email Douglas?
Key.
And she said, Yeah, I said he doesn't, even when we like meet somebody from the bank, he doesn't introduce himself as Douglas.
Mhm.
So something's fishy about this. And sure enough, it was a scam.
Yeah. And I always say, go with your gut, you always, it seems so, like you wouldn't think that, but if your gut's telling you something, follow it. Even if it's better to be overly cautious than not. But those are the things that we're seeing all the time. So tools and resources, I touched upon these. All banking financial institutions offer these. So if you haven't heard from your financial cash management person or lender talking about these, I'm sure you will, or inquire about them just to be sure your financial institution has them. I think there's a misnomer that customers think that, oh, I've had fraud, the bank is going to cover it for me. That's not likely the case. Most banks will do their best to recover those funds. But this is where the insurance comes into play, and Tim will talk about how that plays a part, but also being proactive in what Dave can offer from his side. So solutions from any bank. Check positive pay. This is where this is for all checks that are being issued. It's basically sending a file to your bank. When that check comes in for presentment, it matches up the 3 points of data: amount, payee, and check number. If anything is suspicious or an exception, you have the ability to be able to go on and return those. ACH block and filter. Again, this is really important. We just had a new customer onboarded, just as an example, 3 weeks ago, and somehow their brand new account number was hacked. And they tried 2 large ACH transactions. So that could have been when they went to go order checks, or they gave their account information to a new vendor. Any way, shape, or form. For businesses, ACH, there's rules and regulations around that. If you have no service in place, such as a block or a filter, notify your bank within 24 hours to be guaranteed that that item can be returned. But after that, they will do their best to try to get it for you. But again, it's really another reason why you should be looking at the accounts constantly, reconciling and identifying any suspicious activity. And again, on the ACH piece, what we typically see is the perpetrator will do 4 or 5 small transactions, 5 cents, $1, and then once the 4th time it's gone through, that 5th time, they're going to double, triple, 5, 6, 7 figure to see how much they can pull. So lots of indicators there. We also, and other banks also offer check blocks. So if you have an account that just receives money in, so your receipts only, as you get a larger companies, they tend to segregate payables and receivables. If you know you don't write checks off that, block it completely. So that it gives you some comfort that if something does try to come through, it'll be returned. I touched upon dual control and division of duties. Again, you don't want the same person to be doing all functions. Now, that isn't always doable in some small businesses. If you're a landscaper and you have 5 employees and 1 either part-time bookkeeper, your focus as a business owner is out getting clients, making sure that, you're doing the business that they need. Very, very important to be sure that as the smaller company, you're not relying just on that one person to do all things. Again, reconciling accounts monthly at a minimum, multi-factor authentication. So a lot of times, we will get a request via email. It'll come into my email saying, Shelley, I need to do a transfer. And it looks like it came from my client, but I will call and speak with Lori and saying, Lori, did you send this to me? We just want to double check. Or, we just got a credit reference. Is this good to go? Is this a vendor you're working with? Because if they're not working with a vendor, then somehow that vendor has their account information, or they're trying to gather information. And then reviewing audit controls and disaster recovery plans, which was what Dave had mentioned earlier, sort of building that out when they do the risk assessment piece.
Hey, Shelley, one thing I forgot to mention, we feel the average bad actors on the machine anywhere from 30 to 180 days. I kind of tell people, if you're going to do a bank robbery, they just don't go do it. They got to stage it, see what goes on, look at everything.
That's right.
And
That's
they,
right.
And they wait till they see the magic number of
Yeah.
what they might pay. Are there certain numbers you're seeing on your end from banking, how long they're in there for?
Oh, I would definitely, definitely a minimum of 6 to 8 weeks just
Yep.
on the ACH side. And it's getting a little longer, depending on if it's law firm or title company. Those tend to be higher dollars, so they tend to stick around a little longer, watch the activity. But yes, we've seen them. I had one client reach out to me in February that she was reconciling October's statement. And October, November, December, and January all had ACH fraud, and each month it got higher and higher and higher. So they figured they're going to just keep going till they figure it out,
Right.
really. But yes, that's definitely items there.
You hit that good when you say they do the $1, the $2, seeing is anyone really
Yeah.
watching, and then they just keep on going.
Yes. And as part of also, I think any financial institution, part of my job is when I go and get ready to prepare for an annual review, I look at what's going on. I take a peek. I know Derek's business from a banking perspective. If something seems out of the ordinary, I'm going to bring it to his attention and just say, geez, I've seen this happen with another client. Would this impact you? And then we kind of go from there. And if you're doing that over and over, depending on the client base and knowing your client, their activity is really helpful. And then the folks on the phone and Dave, security tips, you can see we also use identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover, just in a different way from a banking perspective. I don't need to go through all of these, but it's really making sure that you're in a proactive state. When you're in reactive, emotions are high, it's scary, the business owner's involved, the accounting person is freaking out. Trying to keep everyone calm and then saying to them, okay, if you don't have any of the resources in place for fraud solutions, what do you need to do? Your bank should freeze those accounts immediately. Work with your bank to make sure that, you're going to cover all the items that are legitimate, reconcile up till that date to be sure that there's nothing else that's missing, file a police report. Making sure you're reaching out to your insurance company, which, fitting, going next to Tim. And then also going back saying, have you had any conversations with a technology company like Dave's in making sure? So I think when you're in reactive mode, high emotions, if you can be proactive, one of my jobs, and I think any other financial cash manager out there would be saying, if you're not doing it, here's what you should be doing. Talk with your insurance agent. If you don't know anyone on the security side, generally we all know people in the industry. Talk with your peers to make sure those are out there to be sure that you're trying to do all of this, because it's very emotional when something happens and there's large dollars involved. And this is your business. You're working hard. Derek just wants to sell boxes. He doesn't want to have to worry about all this stuff, right? He wants new customers. He wants to expand. And then we as a bank want to do the best that we can for our clients and monitor that as well. All right. So if anyone has questions, I haven't seen anything in the chat. I probably should have asked that, but feel free to send that. But I think this is perfect timing to flip over to Tim Forty, who's the business insurance account executive at Clark Insurance.
Thank you, Shelley. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining the call today and for sticking around for my portion of the presentation. Often when people hear insurance is involved, they go running. So kudos to you for sticking around. You can go to the first slide. So jumping into the presentation here, just to put a broad brush on what cyber insurance is. This is really the line of insurance coverage that's going to protect your business from financial loss that occurs because of a cyber event. It can protect your business's liability if some of your customers' data is stolen, whether that's credit cards, social security numbers. It can also help with remediation costs, legal assistance, investigation fees, crisis communications, notification expenses, and so on and so forth. So we can pop into the next slide. So when talking about cyber insurance and cyber risk in general, it is really important to look at the numbers, right? To see, what is my actual cyber risk? And, the average cost of a data breach in 2021 was $4.24 million. And, a lot goes into this number. They're not just talking about, hey, I needed to pay this to free up my company system from ransomware, or someone extorted these funds from my bank, or, someone fraudulently wired money to a social engineering type attack. They're talking about that and the expenses that come after the fact, right? The business income losses, the loss of revenues for your business, the notification expenses, the legal fees, all of which go into this $4.24 million. 38% of data breach costs are directly attributed to loss of income, so loss of revenue to the business. And this is in part, if you can't operate, your systems are seized up. I know Derek touched on that originally because of one of his competitors. And then two, the reputation following a cyber breach. It is a real possibility that a company loses revenue just due to the reputation, and customers might not feel that their information is safe if they do business with a business that has been hacked. Ransomware cost the world about $20 billion in 2021. 95% of security breaches are primarily caused by human error. And you might look at this statistic and be like, oh, does that mean that 95% of security breaches are preventable? And no, cyber criminals are very good at what they do, right? And we're humans, we make mistakes. So these are going to keep happening. It's just something that you really need to prepare for, and just accept that these attacks are going to come, and to have a plan in place. 47% of cyber attacks are directly targeted at small businesses. 14% are prepared to defend themselves. So really, what you need to ask yourself if you're a small business owner, if I'm hacked today, what is the game plan? If my system falls subject to ransomware and they're requesting Bitcoin, where am I going to get Bitcoin? If I need to go notify my customers, am I dialing for dollars on the phone, sending out emails, or am I hiring a third party to handle that? Phishing attempts, social engineering, which has been mentioned probably about 10 times on this call, is the number one attack that is attempted on small businesses. Derek, I know you touched on this before with the bank, but my question for you was if you've received any phishing emails, the good old Target gift card email, or anything along those lines.
So are you saying I shouldn't have sent all that money to free the Nigerian prince?
Or you shouldn't have gone to Walmart and got gift cards and sent them in.
Yeah, we've received all of those. Yeah.
It's inevitable, right? It's just, if you do any type of business, I get an email once a day from my president saying, hey, Tim, I need you to run to Target and get some gift cards. So it just really is inevitable that it's going to happen. And we can pop into the poll question here, which is the next slide, I believe.
I actually got a call from a customer one day because he received an email that my father was stuck in Italy or something and needed money.
It's amazing how good these criminals are getting. They're very talented people, these hackers. So they don't stop at much. So my poll question is, if you're a business owner out there, or just for your personal interest, are you prepared if you fall victim to a cyber attack? So feel free to answer that. And we can pop into the next slide. All right, so I do not, 75%. So yeah, certainly this call will be beneficial to a ton of people. Good team on this call. If you have any questions, how to be prepared. So jumping into cyber coverage, and before I get into this slide, there are certain things that are going to need to be in place in order for you to obtain the best coverage and the best rates for your business. And Dave did a fantastic job hitting on them. He labeled them the big four, starting with multi-factor authentication, password management, training of employees, and EDR. So as long as those are in place, you should be in a good spot to purchase cyber insurance. And this really can be related to, any other line of insurance coverage, right? If you own a building, but you have a bad roof and a bad electrical system, you're not going to get the best property rate or the best property insurance program. If you have a building and you're missing handrails on a staircase, or you don't have a plowing contractor ready to plow a parking lot and subject to slip and fall, you're not going to get the best general liability rate. And the same can be said for cyber insurance, but that wouldn't be the case if you implemented the big four that Dave talked about. So my recommendation to all of my customers is get standalone cyber coverage. And I can't say this enough. Get standalone cyber coverage. Don't rely on the throw-in type of coverage that so many insurance companies provide. I truly believe it's one of the biggest detriments in our industry in regards to cyber insurance, because on paper, it might look pretty good. It might say, hey, you got $1 million cyber insurance limit, but then you actually dive into the form and the coverage, and it's extremely limiting in nature. So, work with a specialty carrier. That's in big red letters at the top of this slide. I could have spent my full 20 minutes on this slide and this slide alone. So there's a number of coverage items that aren't listed here. And I know there's some insurance folks in the call, so they're probably like, oh, why didn't you list business income or anything like that? But for starters, first party coverage is really, probably the base of where you need to start to make sure you have this. And this is going to be expenses for your business, right? So if money's taken from you, the notification costs, the defense costs, the legal fees are all expenses to your business and will be covered by first party coverage. Secondly, third party coverage. There's been a few mentions on this call of hacking into email systems, customers' data is being taken. If those result in a lawsuit for you, so someone else is suing your business because of a cyber loss that originated at your company, this is going to be covered by third party coverage. Know what's sublimited. Like I said before, don't rely on this throw-in coverage that a lot of insurance companies are providing. On paper, it might say, hey, yeah, you have $1 million limit, but if you fall victim to cyber deception, telecommunications fraud, it could be sublimited at $50,000. This is not a coverage benefit. It's limiting coverage. So know what's sublimited. Coverage for full prior acts. There's probably some businesses on this call that don't have cyber insurance and may look to purchase it after this call. When you're working with your insurance agent or advisor, ask if the program that you're putting into place has coverage for full prior acts. It's been mentioned a few other times in this call that these cyber criminals are extremely patient. They can be in systems for years, months, weeks. If you purchase cyber coverage today, but they got into your system a few months ago, the act didn't occur when you purchase coverage, it occurred before. If you have coverage for full prior acts, it will be covered. Social engineering, this is just human error, right? Mentioned again, ton of times in this call, wiring of money, the Target gift cards, all that stuff. This is all covered by social engineering. Make sure you have coverage for social engineering. And know what's excluded. This is pretty repetitive, so I'll go through this quickly. Oftentimes, third-party coverage is excluded on these throw-in types of insurance programs. So once again, get standalone cyber coverage. Prior acts is often excluded. I mentioned that above. It would be covered under a majority of standalone insurance programs. PCI fines and assessments. Oftentimes when cyber events occur, people will be snooping around, seeing what happened, why it went wrong, and they'll investigate it. And sometimes the Office of Civil Rights gets involved and they'll fine you. They might cover your loss, but they won't cover any fines and assessments. There are programs that do cover it. And then the voluntary parting exclusion. We've mentioned wiring money to fraudulent people. If you voluntarily part with the money and that exclusion is on your policy, you will not have coverage. So once again, make sure that that is not included on your program. We can head to the next slide. So I was told for what industries are at risk that, by the individuals that helped me with this PowerPoint, I shouldn't just put in big red letters every industry. So I had to pick 5. So starting with healthcare, this one's a pretty obvious one as to what industries are at risk. Anything a cyber criminal could ever want is included in the healthcare industry, right? I mean, they have health records, personally identifiable information. Statistically, 4 out of every 10 cyber attacks occur in the healthcare industry. 2, technology, telecommunications. With the rollout of 5G, more and more devices are connected to municipalities, supply chains, those sorts of things. And while this might be great for communications, it does pose what can be classified as a wider net for cyber criminals to do their thing. Financial services industry, this is another fairly obvious one. Cyber criminals like money. There's also the transferring of funds in this industry. So it does pose a large opportunity for cyber criminals to potentially use phishing attacks to get some money wired to them. The energy industry is another big one that's targeted by cyber criminals. And this is due in large part to how high risk the business is, right? So if they find a way, and I believe there's a recent example that was in the news, to hack an oil pipeline or hack a power grid, and they threaten bodily injury or property damage, I mean, guess what? They're going to get their ransom payment because the company can't risk bodily injury or property damage because of the cyber criminal. And then the construction industry is another big one. This one usually takes people by surprise, just because their work isn't directly related to a computer, right? But statistically, this industry falls victim to phishing attacks a little bit more frequently than other industries. It also contains a ton of information that's going to be valuable to cyber criminals. Everything from blueprints, confidential plans, bids, financial information to customers. They have huge subcontractors lists, customer lists. And also too, it's an industry that really can't fall victim, like a lot of industries, to the reputation defense. If they're placing bids, they might not be chosen for a job because they were hacked, because the customer wouldn't feel like their information is safe. So that really ties back into the reputation defense that can be covered under a cyber insurance program. So hopping into the next slide. So a few claims examples. I have 3 of them, and I will say none of these claims examples come from our agency. Maine often doesn't operate like a state, but more of a small town. So, to save our customers, instead of using examples from our agency, decided to pull them from our carrier partners. So construction company cloud hack. Construction company used a third-party cloud service to store their customers' personal information. The cloud provider suffered a data breach. It was deemed that this risk was not transferred through contract, and the owner of the data was actually the construction company. So they were responsible to notify 10,000 past and present customers. You'll see on the bottom right the total of the claims. Investigation costs $181,000, notification costs $41,000. And the defense costs drove the bust and the total cost of the claim at $639,000 and change, making it a $862 and change $1,000 claim. So large claim there. Next one's a medical example where you can change the slide, where a medical group fell victim to a phishing email. So one of the employees opened a link in a fraudulent email which exposed the medical information of 1,200 patients. The Office of Civil Rights got involved later and deemed that they were actually in violation of HIPAA. So not only did the company suffer a data breach, they actually got fined as well. Fortunately, they had a good cyber insurance program, so the fines were covered at $590,000. And then Derek, you're going to find this one funny because you mentioned it earlier. The next one, it's my favorite claim of all time, the Target data breach. So $202 million claim, still one of the largest in history. Hackers stole reportedly 40 million credit card numbers, still one of the biggest data breaches in history. This was caused by an HVAC contractor's stolen credentials. So the lesson to learn here, when you're evaluating your cyber risk, don't only consider your business, consider the customers, clients, and vendors that you work with. This HVAC contractor was definitely brought into this lawsuit. To what extent, we don't know. But I can guarantee you that the legal fees for a $202 million lawsuit were extremely high. And hopefully this HVAC contractor had cyber insurance in place, because there truly would be no other line of coverage to protect them from their stolen credentials. So that is what I have for my presentation. I know the next slide's a Q&A slide for all 3 of us, all the presenters, and including Derek. So if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to field them.
Tim, one thing on that last slide on the targets. I know HVAC, I was more familiar with that, but Derek and I were speaking that this morning about wireless. It came through the wireless that they got through the guest wireless. They didn't separate the guest and the private. So anyone that's a call that's another huge breach is your wireless. Make sure there's a private there's a guest, make sure those passwords are changed, and never, never allow any employee to use your cell phone on the private network. These phones are hacked by so many people. You allow them into the private network, this phone could wreak havoc. So all your employees can use the guest wireless if you want them, but don't let them use the private wireless network.
So I have a question for you, Derek. What was the biggest challenge with this process?
I think the biggest challenge was just getting our arms around what we had to do. And because when we first started the process, it was very intimidating. And I think you have to find someone like PCG, not to plug you too much, Dave, but you need to find somebody that understands, because we got a list that was probably 100 questions long, and we didn't know the answers to probably 88 of them. And so you really need someone that understands how to answer the questions, because the first time we went to our insurance company with this, the price was just outrageously high because we didn't know how to answer any of the questions. So you really need to get your ducks in a row before you go to the insurance company, so that you're ready, so that you're not going to them with a house that you're trying to ensure that you've given everybody in town a key to.
Yep. So that was going to be my next question, is what was the biggest surprise, good or bad?
Yeah, the biggest surprise was how expensive it is.
Yeah, there
That
we
was
go.
the biggest surprise.
Yeah. You have any other questions for anyone? Well, I want to thank
One thing, Catherine, just to, I want to make sure people on the call, and I briefly spoke to Derek, you need to have a work from home policy. It's in the benefit for people that the business assets that hopefully it's a business owned machine, but if they're working from home, they're on your network. Make sure you know what you want, because that's part of the cyber insurance, correct? Because so many people that are working remotely that have access to that data, that you kind of control what they can or can't do. And it's important to know that I'm not allowing this person at home to allow my kids to use this machine. There's just a public wireless. It's very easy for you to kind of secure that whole, because we always talk about, Catherine, about the remote workforce. That's how they're getting in. So whatever you're doing here, make sure the remote work home policy is part of your cyber security process.
Okay. So we've put the survey link in the chat. Please take a moment and let us know what you think will keep this session open, so you can do that. We'll also send our follow-up email with the slides and other resources that we mentioned. Thank you to our sponsors, Masthead, Maine, and Bangor Savings Bank. We really appreciate that. Thank you to our fabulous speakers. It was good to hear from everyone. And join us on Wednesday, August 17th from 4 to 8 p.m. at Riverwinds Farm in Saco for our Family Fun Festival. And have a great day. Enjoy the start to summer.
Thank you guys.
Thank
everybody.
you.
Take care. Thank you.